Kate Newlifalcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. Welcome to all of my returning subscribers. I really appreciate your faithfully continuing to watch my videos and appreciate the kind comments. That's always nice. Appreciate any comments, but especially when they're kind. Welcome to new viewers. That's wonderful. Everybody make sure you've done all the thumbs and bells and buttons and stuff. Very important. And you might consider becoming a member. 99 cents. I also have a Substack called Ask Your Irish Granny. I take questions. It's like an advice column. But I also do essays and put a lot of videos over there that I don't feel comfortable putting on YouTube. Censorship. Somebody was asking me, where are all of my videos with Denise? Well, a few might be here on YouTube, but we've had to be very cautious because sometimes one of us swears, and then that's a problem. And because they've gotten very strict here. And sometimes we talk about topics that attract unwanted attention and get us in trouble. As many of you might know, because I complain about it all the time, I have been in YouTube jail 4 times, which is the equivalent of 12 months of probation. It's nuts. Every time you get in trouble, because you've said something that breaks the rules, you have to take a test to prove you know what the rules are. As soon as the test is finished and you've passed it, the clock starts to tick and you have 3 months where they watch every single thing you say. If you get in trouble, you can lose your channel. It's happened to me 4 different times because of 4 different things. And I only for one thing do I know what it was I said. And it was a conversation Denise and I had, and we were joking, and there's no humor in the algorithm. They don't understand humor. And it was, I can't repeat it, but it was innocuous, making fun of people who wouldn't wear masks when it was an appropriate thing to do 5 years ago, not in downtown Chicago today. And yeah, so just to let you know that there are plenty of things that Denise and I have done together on my YouTube, my Substack, Ask Your Irish Granny. Go on a laptop, go to the website, access it. You have to sign up, but it doesn't cost anything to sign up. And once you're inside the world of Substack, then search for Ask Your Irish Granny. In the meantime, I want to talk about something that happened a very long time ago that has absolutely, I would say, haunted me. I've been fascinated by it. The first time I read about it, it fascinated me. And it continues. And we will be exploring this with Deborah Lupien sometime in the very near future. In the meantime, let me give you the background, because this is quite an interesting story. And this combines our 2 favorite topics that are not metaphysical, which are very old movies and crime. So this is the death of William Desmond Taylor. And this is quite a story. This is layer upon layer of story. So William Cunningham Dean Tanner was born April 26, 1872 in Carlow, Ireland. He was one of the gentry, the ascendancy. These are Anglo-Irish, so these are not really Irish people. I'm probably making everybody mad, but you have the native Irish people of Irish descent. Their families have always lived there. And you have the people who came over from England and oppressed the Irish people. They stayed. They took the land and they stayed, and their children and their children's children were born there. Therefore, technically, they call themselves Irish, but not necessarily regarded that way by native Irish people. Now, all of this was much more fraught 100, 200 years ago, but you hear me, there are still remnants. So he would be considered the gentry. Now, these are the descendants of the English invaders, the oppressors who kicked the people off their land and stole it and built the big houses. If you go to Ireland and you see these big, gigantic houses that people like to call castles or estates or whatever, those are the houses of the English that took over. The Irish people lived in buildings that didn't last for a very long time. Plaster walls and straw roofs, because that's all they were allowed. And they don't stand up the test of time the way big stone piles of mansions do. I didn't know I was going to get into it so quickly. I only read one sentence so far. Anyway, born in Ireland, his father was a British officer in the King's Royal Rifle Corps, and at home he was a tyrant. His uncle was an MP, a member of Parliament from Mid-Cork, which is a representative to the British government. Taylor was one of 5 children. He grew up in Carlow and he went to college at Marlborough College in England. He was a problem. He got kicked out every place he went to school, and he was always in trouble. And his father and he did not get along. So the way that it was presented in this one thing I read is entirely different when I listened to a story of his life. And I thought, oh, so this is interesting. So the story is that he left Ireland to go work on a dude ranch in Kansas. But what really happened was he was sent away from Ireland to what would you call it, like a reform ranch. It was a dude ranch, but all the kids that went there were sent there to straighten them out. Hard work, physical labor, straighten them out, make men of them, because he liked to act, and his bully boy, tyrant British officer father did not like that. So he got into some more acting and left the ranch, went to New York City, met a woman, Ethel May Hamilton, who her father had money, and he owned antique shops. So he hired Taylor, and he worked in this antique shop. They got married December 7th in 1901, and 2 dates, 1902, 1903, sometime in that period of time, they had a daughter. They were well known socially, very social, the two of them. They had money, and he was a heavy drinker, given to depression, very unfaithful. He had many affairs. And then the plot thickens. October 23rd, 1908, he disappeared. What happened? Nobody knew what happened to him. Just didn't come home one day. We find out later he deserted his family. Friends said that he would have periodic amnesia. I think what they're talking about is alcoholic blackouts. This was not that. He intentionally abandoned his family and traveled. He lived an itinerant lifestyle for a while. In 1908, nobody had any idea what he was doing. That's when he first disappeared. He went gold mining. He joined traveling acting troupes. He tried producing stage stuff. And in 1912, he went to San Francisco. He changed his name. As I told you, his birth name was William Cunningham Dean Tanner. He changed his name to William Desmond Taylor. He begged and got money from old rich friends in New York, and he went to Los Angeles. So while he was there, his wife filed for divorce, but she didn't really know what happened to him. I think she filed desertion and was given. They had connections too. There is a rumor, and I want to make it really clear. This is alleged. There was a rumor, and not that there's anything wrong with this. The reason I bring it up at all is because this man lived a double life. He lived a life of secrecy. And it complicates things when you're talking about the fact that he was murdered. So in Los Angeles, probably in San Francisco, when he got to California and changed his name, he joined a number of what are called homosexual clubs, homosexual societies. And it is known, strongly suspected, that he had intimate relationships with men, and he was really into opium. And of course, ended up in Hollywood, as you do when you're addicted to opium. And he began acting. Now we're not talking stage acting, now we're talking silent films. And the first silent film he made, that he was in it, he wasn't the star, was the counterfeiter for a production company called KB. Then he made 4 movies for Vitagraph, which might sound more familiar to you. And in 1919, he became engaged to Neva Gerber. Now, keep in mind, he abandoned his family. Did he know that his wife had divorced him? I couldn't get that information. I don't know. This is interesting. And I don't know if Neva knows about his other family. Anyway, she described him, so I'm suspecting she may not know about his checkered past. This is a quote. He was the soul of honor, a man of personal culture, education, and refinement. I have never known a finer or better man. And he was known for his plummy British accent. Well, he was born in Ireland, but there's this very much isolated caste system where he would assume a very English accent. Before he got married in 1919, in 1914, he began directing, and he worked for the Balboa Company. He worked for Favorite Players, not to be confused with another group, sounds similar. He worked for the American Film Manufacturing Company. He made The Diamond from the Sky. And then he worked for a thing called Palace, Pallas, as in mythology, Palace Pictures. And they went on to become famous players Lasky, that very well-known silent film company. In 1915, he met up with his brother's wife. Now, this is interesting. His brother had also abandoned his wife and children in 1912. So maybe he had 4 years to think about the 1908 desertion that William did, and his brother Dennis followed 4 years afterwards in his footstep. This sister-in-law, her name was Ada. She had come to the town of Monrovia, which is, LA County basically, to get treatment for tuberculosis. Her sister, so kind of not related to him, but only related by marriage, her sister was married to the head doctor at the sanatorium. That's why she went up to that place. In 1918, in July, he joined the Canadian Army. I don't know why he didn't join the American Army. Not entirely sure what date the Americans entered the war. I think they were already in the war. I could be wrong about it. We're talking World War I. He joined the Canadian Army. It may very well have had to do with his loyalties to his British roots. You know, he sailed from Halifax to London in December of 1918. In 1919, he found himself in April in France. And in 1919, in May, so he spent 1 month in France, he was back in Los Angeles. And he was honored by the Motion Picture Directors Association. He spent 1 month in the war. Yeah. He got this honor as this, you know, this big war guy. And he went on to direct very popular stars. People are fooled by that, you know, aristocratic accent, and he very much looked the part. He was tall, he had the aquiline nose, he looked very much the part of a minor nobility, that if you would imagine, you know, a character in a movie. He directed Mary Pickford, Wallace Reed. Wallace Reed was a sad character. We should look into him. Mary Miles Mintner. In 1919, she played Anne of Green Gables. She was one of these pseudo Mary Pickford sorts. Mary Pickford was very petite, and she looked young, and she made a lot of movies as the ringleted little girl, like barely pubescent. Yeah, when she was older, you know, in her 20s. And Mary Miles Minter was a child star, bit younger, who did all these, you know, juvenile roles, and she played Anne of Green Gables. By then, Taylor's first wife and his daughter that he abandoned, they figured out where he was and what his new name was. They saw him in a movie. I love it. So he got busted. In 1921, he visited New York City, and surprisingly, I think, given his history, his track record, he actually changed his will and made that first daughter his heir. So that was 1921, late in the year. 7:30 a.m. on February 2nd, 1922, his body was found in his own apartment. Now, he lived in one of those little courts. I don't know if everybody knows what those are, but in California, especially, they made them in around the 20s. Really nice places. They would be like a common green area, and in the horseshoe kind of shape, or an open-ended rectangle. Here's the street, the sidewalk, and you'd go up some steps, and there'd be this grassy area, and there'd be a series of small bungalows. So they were little, but they weren't tiny houses. They just weren't sprawling with huge yards. And they were called bungalows. His was 2 floors, 2 stories. I mean, they were substantial enough. And they're usually done in a sort of pseudo Moorish style, you know, the adobe stucco, red tile type style often. His was the Alvarado Court Apartments in Westlake in Los Angeles. And his body was discovered by his butler, and there was much shouting and gnashing of teeth, and a crowd gathered. And a guy in the crowd said, "I'm a doctor. Let me see him." And he pushed his way forward to the body. Now, this is a crime scene. And examined him and said, "Oh, he died of a stomach hemorrhage," and took off. And this guy was never seen again. So already 5 minutes in, you know, the crime scene has been tainted. So then the forensic investigators, such as they were, showed up and rolled him over and saw he'd been shot in the back, and with a small handgun, obviously. So February 7th, 5 days later, they had the funeral at St. Paul's Cathedral in Los Angeles, and he was put in the mausoleum at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Santa Monica. We probably can go still visit them. That'd be interesting. When they found his body, in his pocket, they found a wallet with $78, a silver cigarette case, a pocket watch, a penknife, a locket with a picture of Mabel Normand. Mabel Normand was the actress who made all the movies with Roscoe Arbuckle. Roscoe and Mabel, remember those movies we talked about? And on his finger was a 2-carat diamond ring. So they thought, well, $78, a locket, and a 2-carat diamond. We don't think that he was shot because he was robbed. However, later they discovered there was a large sum of money missing. Apparently he had money in the house and it was missing. The time of his death was established at 7:50 p.m. on the day before. So he had been dead through the night. But that makes no sense. And I don't understand. They were very clear that it was at night that they thought he was shot because somebody heard a gunshot, and that's why they went to see what was going on. So after 5 days, the police finally got around to talking to Mary Miles Minter. And she claimed that Taylor had made delusional statements about people that he knew. Now, there's no elaboration on that, no explanation of what she meant by that. Her friend, a guy called Marshall Nealon, told the police that Taylor was insane. Interesting. This was a media circus. The sheriff said, the industry is being hurt. Stars are being ruined. Stockholders have lost millions of dollars. And there are a lot of people that are out of jobs and mad about this because this was a gigantic scandal. And there's more to this, and so you're going to find out what the scandal was. But the studios were really worried that this case was just going to destroy Hollywood. A retired police detective later told King Vidor, director, that we got the world to lay off. So they got the word to lay off. They got the word to maybe not investigate this so much, certainly not talk about it to the papers. They were told to just leave well enough alone. So now we get into why was this such a big scandal? What is one dead director such a big deal that millions of dollars are being lost? So the first suspect witness, gray area. The first one was Edward Sands. Now, he had been Taylor's valet and cook until 7 months before the murder. That summer, Taylor had gone to Europe. And when he was gone in the summer of 1921, his valet, who stayed behind, took care of the house, he forged checks with Taylor's name and stole money and wrecked Taylor's car, didn't take responsibility for it. Later, he burgled Taylor's bungalow while Taylor was still gone. And they know that he did it because they matched footprints on the bed. So never did explain why he was walking around on the bed in his shoes, but apparently that was part of the deal. After this murder, after the body was discovered, Sands was never seen again. So that's a little sus. The second person is Henry Peavy. Now, he took the job after Sands was gotten rid of. Sands was still around, but this is before the murder, 7 months earlier. was discovered he'd stolen money and wrecked the car and everything. He kind of disappeared off the radar, but was still around. And after the body was found, he was gone completely. They couldn't find him. 7 months earlier, Taylor comes back from Europe, discovers all this has been going on in his absence, and he replaces Sands with a guy called Henry Peavy. He's the one who found the body. Important to mention that he's African American, so that would predispose certain people to feel a certain kind of way at the time. The hierarchical nonsense that went on. He was kind of, infamous is the wrong word, but he was known for wearing golf clothes, even though he didn't play golf. 3 days before the body was found, before this shooting, he had been arrested for vagrancy and was called lewd and dissolute. Now, I wonder about that. Is this like a Jim Crow situation? You know, if you're a black man standing on the street, you're vagrant. That was very common, and I don't know how bad it was in LA at the time. The writer of the Daily News said that, the New York Daily News said that he was the murderer even after the cops cleared him. The cops cleared him. They actually tried to trick him into admitting he was the killer. They set up this elaborate racist ghost situation to trap him, hoping that when they jump out and scared him with Taylor's ghost, that he'd blurt out, "What are you doing alive? I thought I shot you." But when this pretend ghost presented itself, Peavy just laughed at them and then cursed them for being, fools. In 1931, so almost 10 years later, he died of dementia caused by syphilis. Ugh. So then we have Mabel Normand. Poor Mabel, boy. She had quite a life. She was the comedian co-star with Roscoe Arbuckle, Charlie Chaplin. She was also kind of the girlfriend of, oh God, what's his name? The Keystone Cops. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'll think of it. Taylor loved Mabel. He was really in love with her. She asked him to help her because she was dependent on cocaine. And he tried to get her help a number of different times, but she would continue to relapse. And she had a very difficult life. She found her boyfriend, whose picture I can see in my head, and I can't remember his name. He was the head of the Keystone Cops, the studio. She caught him with another woman, and she got hit on the head, and she was in a coma. She was never the same after that, but she got involved in cocaine. And Taylor tried to help her, but she would constantly have relapses. And he was really upset about it. And he actually went to prosecutors and said, "I will testify against her suppliers. If you leave her out of it, I will testify against the suppliers to cut off her supply." And so the cops speculated, was this a contract killing? They didn't think that Mabel had anything to do with it, but they thought that maybe her associates, her suppliers. She'd been at his house. She might have been the last person to see him alive. She was the last person that we know of to see him alive. She'd been at his house and had just dropped off for a minute to pick up a book. He lent her a book at 7:45 in the evening. I guess they did think he was killed at 7:50. I had read that somebody heard a gunshot. It must not have been in the morning when his body was discovered. He must have lain there all night. laid there he was at his desk all night. Anyway, she got the book from him, and she was being driven by a chauffeur and got into her limo and blew kisses at him as she left. And there's eyewitnesses. So she left, and they saw him because she blew kisses at him. The police really gave her the third degree. She underwent a grueling interrogation, and she was ruled out. Because of her addiction, it was revealed in this investigation, her reputation was really tarnished because it was considered a moral failing. And she cried all the way through the funeral. I mean, this really devastated her. She continued to make movies, but she died 8 years later from tuberculosis, and her life was just spiraled out of control. A few days before she died, she asked a friend, "Do you think they'll ever find out who killed Bill Taylor?" Very sad. Now, the cocaine, the having affairs with movie stars, these are things that are leading up to this is destroying Hollywood. But here comes the next one. The fourth possible eyewitness suspect, Mary Miles Minter, the child star and then a teen idol. I guess she's kind of like Christina Aguilar and what's her name? Britney Spears and those guys, child star and then became a bigger star. Taylor had guided her career. I think that's the only thing he guided. She was only 3 years older than his daughter, and she'd never had a father. And so there was this kind of paternalistic relationship at first. But they found love letters to him from her in his bungalow. And there was a relationship between them when she was 17 and he was 47. So 2 years later when he died, he was only 49. She was 19. There are those who knew them who, like, for example, King Vidor, they dispute this. They said that she had a crush on him. She was a kid. She had a crush on him, and it was unrequited. He often declined to see her. She'd try to get in touch with him, and he would decline to see her. He told people he was too old for her. So there was something going on there. Was he being honest? Well, what's his track record look like? I read in a book a long time ago, but this really jumped out at me. When he was discovered, at some point, and I don't remember because it's been a very long time and I couldn't find it again because I read it in a book 50 years ago. When he was discovered, there had already been a removal of possessions from his house, including ladies' lingerie and nightgowns, and that these letters were accidentally overlooked, allegedly. I guess we're going to have some interesting questions for Deborah to pursue. But this whole thing really kind of destroyed her reputation too. It was vilified. She was vilified and destroyed her reputation. So now we've got top directors and top stars and child stars and adult actors and multiple convoluted relationships and cocaine. So now you can see why things are Hollywood, Sin City. This is what people thought. She made 4 more movies for Paramount, but then her contract was not renewed. She got a few other offers, but the truth is she never really liked acting. She was pushed into it by her mother, and she just refused to take any more offers. In 1957, so what, 30 years later, roughly, give or take, she married a businessman, and she died in Santa Monica in 1984. I think about that. You could have met her and talked to her if you'd known she was there. Yeah, very interesting. Then we have another suspect witness slash who knows what, Charlotte Shelby, Mary Miles Mittner's mother. This woman was the quintessential manipulative, greedy stage mother. She and her daughter had been in legal disputes and lawsuits about money and movie rights, etc., but they had just recently reconciled. Her first conversation with the police, she was described as evasive, and it was filled with lies. Every time they asked about her daughter or Taylor, other types of things. She owned a gun that had unusual bullets, like the kind that killed Taylor. She threw her gun in the Louisiana bayou when she just happened to be passing through. She knew the Los Angeles district attorney, and she spent years outside the country avoiding questions and the press. In 1938, her other daughter, who was an alcoholic and suffered depression, accused her mother of doing it, of killing him. She was widely suspected. For example, Adela Rogers St. John, she wrote quite a bit about Arbuckle too. She suggested that Shelby did it protecting her daughter from Taylor. She got wind of something going on. Also, that Shelby herself was in love with Taylor, with some weird love triangle between the mother and the daughter and Taylor. But she was really afraid of being tried and stayed out of the country for years, decades. Two subsequent Los Angeles, getting hiccups. Two subsequent district attorneys in Los Angeles declined to charge her. 20 years later, they looked at it again and said there was insufficient evidence, but they kept all the evidence and kept all the files, which then disappeared. She died in 1957. Wait a minute here. It just dawned on me. The year she died, her daughter got married. Isn't that interesting? So she died in 57, and in 1970, she died in 57, and in 73, the district attorney did himself in. I don't know if there's a connection, but they mentioned it. So now the next suspect is Margaret Gibson. She worked with Taylor. In 1917, she had been acquitted of charges of sex work and opium dealing. She changed her name to Patricia Palmer. And in 1923, she was jailed for extortion. Didn't say who she was extorting. And later, those charges were dropped. At the time of his murder, she was in Los Angeles. She was 27 years old. In 1964, she confessed to the murder before she died. Everybody wants to take credit for this thing. It was very poor crime scene investigation. There was a lot of corrupt behavior between the studios and the cops. And by corrupt behavior, I mean the studio hiding things from his apartment before the police could get there. The cops being told to step back down. Evidence disappearing. The case has never been solved. This was the first national, big, gigantic celebrity murder. And because of the movies, it became well known. There was a lot of public interest, and the story sold a lot of newspapers, so they drove the story by making money on the newspapers. And this really fed anti-Hollywood sentiment. A lot of editorials about Hollywood being like the Roman times or orgies or Sodom and Gomorrah. There was a whole movement called Destroy Hollywood. And some said that Taylor was a villain and got what was coming to him. There were accusations of a conspiracy, of a cover-up. But there were a number of scandals around the same time period, roughly, that kind of fed this anti-Hollywood narrative. Arbuckle, the tragic death of Olive Thomas, who I just love, and it's so sad because virtually none of her movies survived. Bits and pieces did. Thomas Ince, I think we talked about that. With Deborah a while back. I don't remember the context, but we talked about allegedly was shot to death on William Randolph Hearst's boat. Wallace Reed, such a great actor. And he did all his own stunts, and he was badly injured. And the studio would not let him get medical attention and forced him to work to finish up a budget, finish the movie quickly. And as a result, he had like permanent damage. It was some sort of back injury. And they gave him opioids, and he ended up becoming addicted to heroin, and it killed him. It was very sad. Barbara Lamar was the wife of Paul Byrne, who later was married to Jean Harlow, if I'm not imagining things. And he came to a bad end. And then Jean Ingalls died of drugs. So there's all these different scandals. Hollywood studios started writing morality clauses into their contracts for their actors, or moral turpitude clauses. I thought this was funny. In 2012, they had the 140th anniversary of Taylor's birth, and they celebrated it in Carlow in Ireland as Taylor Fest, and it's an arts and film festival. And there's a 2020 episode called Murder in Hollywoodland, maybe as a podcast, August 27th, 2024. So it's 2020, the show, not the date, the show. So that's the sad story, the big mystery of William Desmond Taylor. And I will be looking up this a little more closely with Deborah soon. So stay tuned. And thank you very much for watching. Slungafoil. Slunch.